Okay, so since I said I am assuming that you're probably self-proclaimed Christians, I'm going to start by asking 3 questions and then using 3 quotes to speak to the reason why I have put this material together and the reason why I'm sharing it with you. So first question is this. How many of you have had a bad church experience? Raise your hand. Half-ish, I'd say. I actually expected more than that. Are those experiences because Christianity is flawed, would you say? There's an inherent flaw in the belief system that would lead to bad church experiences. Anybody want to say yes and tell me what that flaw might be? Or is everyone agreeing? I'm seeing a lot of back and forth no's. Any yeses in the crowd? Just for fun? Just to be different? But you have to back that up with what is the inherent flaw in Christianity that would create a bad church experience?
Humanity, the nature of mankind.
Okay, so it's the humans partaking in the Christianity, not the Christianity itself.
Yes.
All right, I'll go with that. Let me ask you a second question with the same follow-up question. What do you suppose is the number one description of Christians by non-Christians? Throw an answer out. It's unanimous. We're all a bunch of hypocrites. Clearly. Raise your hand if you're a hypocrite. Do you really believe you're a hypocrite? Maybe we need to define the term. So they're accurate then to call us hypocrites. Speak for yourselves. Is this because there is something inherently wrong with Christianity that would create a room full of hypocrites? Yes or no? If yes, give me a reason why. So it's not Christianity's fault that we're hypocrites. It's not Christianity's fault that we have bad church experiences. Let me ask you one more. When atheists attack Christianity, they tend to bring up, well, this is more of a statement than a question. They tend to bring up the Crusades, the Inquisition, things like that to demonstrate how Christianity must be flawed in order to produce such obviously violent and wrong acts. What's that? Slavery. The list does kind of go on. And so they look at that evidence and then draw an implication from that evidence that something is leading to that time after time, and it's inevitable that it would happen. So would you agree that that's the case? So still no inherent flaw. Even though we're getting as bad as slaughtering Muslims or burning witches or taking races as slaves and blaming that on the belief system, you don't think it's the belief system's fault. Okay, neither do I. Let me give you 3 quotes that I find to be a little bit haunting. Have you ever heard or possibly said this? So-and-so unbeliever is a better Christian than most Christians I know. Ever heard that or said that? What an interesting statement. How can that be? How can that be true? How is that even possibly true? If you're like me and you operate on a Windows operating system, then just keep letting these windows pop open, okay? Oh, I'll put that one up there, put it up there, because we're going to deal with those questions kind of as we go along as to why those questions exist, why these statements exist, and what's the flaw in them all. How about this one? I just heard this one on the radio the other day. You'll never find a perfect church. If you do, don't go there because it won't be perfect anymore if you do. Have you ever heard that? Yes, yes. So, there's no such thing as a perfect church. True or false? Everyone says true. Why is that true? Because humans are there. All right. Here's another one. This is a statement by G.K. Chesterton. I don't know if you've heard of him. Really like that guy. He's really smart. He says, the Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried. Yeah, that's quite the indictment, isn't it? Yes, I will. I know he says things hard to understand. Here we go. The Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried. It's quite a sweeping statement. Would you, off first reaction, would you agree or disagree with that statement? Agree. In a room full of Christians, we're going to agree with him that Christianity, the Christian ideal, has been found difficult and left untried. Untried by us? So that's quite a confession. No wonder we're hypocrites. No wonder we have church problems. We're not even trying our own belief system. Where do we go from there? That's depressing. Okay, here's what I think about all of that. First of all, I'm glad you guys have said all of that. That's going to make my job a whole lot easier. If I was going to have to convince you, it was going to be a little trickier. Let me read to you a very familiar passage, a couple of them, in Acts. So what we have in Acts, of course, is the beginnings of the church. All right? Jesus was crucified, and on the third day he resurrected. 40 days later, he ascended, and 10 days later, something massive happened, right? Called Day of Pentecost. And that would be the beginning of the church. It wasn't a plan. They didn't know it was going to begin on that day, but when you have 3,000 people suddenly believe you have a church on your hands. So, the description of that church goes like this. So this is Acts chapter 2. And I'm going to start reading. Good heavens, that's small. I can't read that. What was I thinking? I have to quote it. Well, the problem is I want the English Standard Version. I mean, the NIV would be all right. I think the NIV is probably okay. Yeah, I better use another Bible. Is that the NIV? All right. Oh, wait, there's one right here on the piano. No, yeah, there's one right here. We'll go with that. I prefer usually the English Standard, but I don't know if it matters in this case. Nah, it's fine. Large print. Yes. What was that? Longer arms? Yeah. Usually I use my phone, but we have some older people in here. They might not think that's a real Bible. No offense. I didn't get no offense out. She was already offended. All right. So they being the first set of Christians. Okay, Acts 2:42 is where I'm at if you're reading along. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone as he had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. Every day. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. And then if you flip over to chapter 4, we get a little bit more. Chapter 4, starting in verse 32. All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of his possessions was his own, but they shared everything they had. With great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and much grace was upon them all. There were no needy persons among them, for from time to time, those who owned lands or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales, and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone as he had need. Joseph, a Levite from Cyprus, whom the apostles called Barnabas, which means son of encouragement, sold a field he owned and brought the money and put it at the apostles' feet. I don't know why he got singled out there, but so does that sound a lot like your own personal experience of church? Sounds like. Do you suppose these people would be called hypocrites? Or, I mean, she says they enjoyed the favor of all the people. Nobody's calling them hypocrites yet. Why the difference? Why the huge difference between this setting and ours? I think we can probably pick it apart a little bit, but I think the answer is going to go deeper than what we can really pick at. These are just people. They're not any different than we are. So what is the difference? If they're not super Christian somehow, not endowed with something other than humanity, I would call this pretty perfect church. And here's what I think is going on. Here's what I think the difference is. I think it's the teaching. Now, I'm going to try to be not offensive. And when the things that I say, here's some things you need to know about the things I'm going to say here. One, when I refer to teaching, I'm referring to it all. Okay? So I'm not speaking to any particular teaching, any particular teacher. And when I say the word church, I'm not talking about Maranatha. I'm talking about church, capital C. I basically mean the Western church, which is what I know, what I experience, and who we are. So the Western church, North American church in particular, and I mean all of us. So I will still be a little offensive, but maybe not as offensive as it might sound right off the get-go. Okay, so I'm going to blame the teaching. And here's what I mean to say about this. When the church began, there were 12 teachers at least. We have the apostles. And the new Christians, the students, some of which had probably heard some of what Jesus had to say themselves, they had devoted themselves. You heard me read that. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. Now, I would like to go anywhere where 12 different guys can teach in the same place without creating a problem. They were so unified in their theology that they could all be teaching in the same place. And the response to that would be a group of people who all had one heart and one mind. That's the difference. The teaching was pure. And it was pure partially because it was early. And it was pure because it had been enabled by being with Jesus for 3 years. And of course, the Holy Spirit is just all over these guys. And that's necessary, especially in the case of beginning the church. But really, has anything changed? Not much. We have the Bible. And that's changed. But as much as there's a lot of power in that, you have to interpret it. So even with the Bible, I would challenge, go randomly choose 12 leaders, teachers of the Bible, and put them all in the same place and see what happens. It won't take long. It won't take long, and there'll be splits. So this has always concerned me. I grew up a Christian. I grew up in a particular church, a particular denomination, if you want to call it that. And even as a kid, I had issues with some of the things they were saying. And it always bothered me. Why are they saying these things? This is obviously not true. And then in my life story, we moved quite a bit, and in the moving would often get involved in a different kind of church. And I started to notice that the teaching was very different depending on which church we went to. The first church I went to emphasized works a lot. Very legalistic, focused on water baptism to the degree that if you weren't baptized in water, you were going to hell, regardless of anything else. One of the things I knew couldn't be right. And then when I was in grade 6, we went to a Pentecostal church. And the emphasis changed quite a bit. Suddenly, there was this thing called speaking in tongues. I didn't even know it existed. And that was a new experience. Except that I remember going to camp and having them say, unless you spoke in tongues, you weren't saved. Like, that can't be right. I mean, I'm only 12 years old, but I think I knew the Bible well enough at that point to go, I don't think that can be true. And then moved and went to a Baptist church, and they said that tongues didn't exist. Well, I just had 3 years in a Pentecostal church. I knew better. Like, how can you say that? What are you saying about all the Pentecostals? And they would make really weird claims about the Pentecostals. So clearly, they'd never met one. But I'm like, okay, that can't quite be right. And I've got story after story after story like that. I moved around a lot. And so this just kept bothering me as I got older. And then next thing I knew, I found myself in ministry. First a youth pastor, and got into a lot of trouble there. And then eventually pastoring a church. And so these things just really got close to my heart and a concern of mine. Because I'd read the Bible, and I honestly, I read that passage in Acts, those two passages, I believe them. And I don't just believe that it was true. I believe it should be true. And so when I ask a question in a setting like this, I ask these questions or use these quotes, it's concerning. People shouldn't think we're hypocrites unless they're just absolutely wrong. But we already admitted that we are. Well, what does that mean? Is it true, or are we just saying it's true, or are we just think we're supposed to say that it's true? What does it mean to be a hypocrite? How is it possible that a non-Christian can be a better Christian than most Christians that we know? How is that possible? How is it even possible for someone to say that? Do they even know what it means to be a Christian? Because I'm telling you, it's impossible. A non-Christian cannot be a better Christian than a Christian. It's, by definition, impossible. So that means that the definition of Christian has obviously been changed. And this is my point. I think this is a teaching problem. And the emphasis at the beginning was clearly what Jesus had given them to emphasize. And especially his last kind of statement to them, his mission to them, his call to them to go forth into the world and make disciples. Baptize those disciples and then teach them to what? See, we should all have this memorized. Teach them to obey everything that I have taught you. And that was their emphasis. It's not anymore. It's not anymore. That's what's changed. The emphasis has shifted throughout the decades, throughout the centuries, throughout the millennia. It's been a long time. We've gotten a long ways away. And I think in our culture, this is just my own personal opinion, to oversimplify perhaps, I think in our culture the emphasis has shifted from that simple making disciples and teaching them to obey everything Jesus has commanded, has shifted to church building. And sometimes literally church buildings. But I mean building the church. And so there's two sides of the coin that happens with that. One is the side of diplomacy. So we want to make Christianity as easy to swallow as possible so that we can get more people and so that we can keep those people. So we don't teach everything. We teach the things that are digestible in the culture that we're in. Now, again, I'm indicting the whole church, not this one. And I'm indicting even my own self as a church leader in the past, not currently. It's just a kind of habit we fall into in a marketing culture, in a business-oriented, success-driven culture, where we just need to achieve and we need to grow and we need to build, otherwise we're dead. And so we just keep approaching it. What's the strategies that we can use to bring people in and to keep them? And it isn't about making disciples or teaching them to obey everything Jesus commanded. And how I know that is, traditionally, historically, in my own experience and observation, is that if you focus on making disciples and teaching them to obey everything Jesus commanded, you will be small. That's what I've seen. Not always. That's up to God. I don't want to make a sweeping statement, but typically speaking, it isn't digestible. It isn't digestible. Even the gospel itself, as wonderful as it is abrasive to most people. It's a stumbling block, right? It's foolishness. This is how it's described in Scripture. So Jesus himself said, the road is narrow. Few will find it. We shouldn't be surprised by that. But how does few look at the bottom line? Few doesn't look very good on the bottom line, so things have to be adjusted. The flip side of that is a kind of antagonism, where we create an us and them mentality. And so it's us, the Christians, versus them, the world. And so we get a lot of kind of self-righteous finger pointing at those bad people out there. And You would think that would have the opposite effect of church growth, but it doesn't, because it creates a sense of loyalty and togetherness. We're the good people. We're the acceptable people. And that's, speaks to human psychology. It's quite effective. But we'll take that a step further typically, and not just say that applies to those people out there that don't follow Jesus, but it actually applies to those Christians out there that aren't in our denomination. They don't know as much as us. They don't do as well as us. Maybe they're Christians, maybe, but they're dumb ones. It's probably not their fault, but for some reason they keep going over there, so something must be wrong with them. So there's that as well. And these emphases are very distracting and counterproductive. Now, if you add all of that to a problem that I call willy-nilly Christianity, which kind of looks like this. I know this is a very terrible way to start, right? This is a real downer. But I'm telling you the problem so we can try to work towards a solution. Here's the way Christian education normally works. Someone comes to Jesus through some means. Let's call it an alpha course if you want. And they're like, wow, this is obviously true. Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus died for my sins. He rose from the dead. I can raise from the dead too. I'm eternal. This is awesome. And then they go to church. Which church? Whichever. Totally depends, right? Who knows? So, as I pointed out, they're all teaching different stuff. So right off the bat, it's kind of like, if we were going to do a little activity, here's the activity we would do at this point. I would separate you into 3 groups, and we would have a race. I actually bought the materials I needed for this and then decided not to do it. Yeah, not very bright. What I would give to you is a pile of puzzle pieces, and each group a pile of puzzle pieces, and we'd have a race to see who could make the most complete puzzle in a given amount of time. Here's the problem. First of all, I would not let you see the picture. And then I would not give you all the pieces. Not only would I not give you all the pieces, I will have mixed up the pieces already. So I've taken all 3 puzzles, put them in a pile, and then just took a third and went like this. Who knows, right? And on top of that, I would have added pieces from another puzzle entirely. But I wouldn't have told you, and they would have been very similar. So I had 3 puzzles that were the same, and they were kind of flowers and stuff like that. And then I had a 4th puzzle that was also flowers. You can get a pile of those as well. Now go. You'd have been very frustrated very quickly. And the reason why you would have been frustrated is because you know it's not supposed to be like that. But if you'd never done puzzles before and didn't know that, you'd be trying to shove this thing together, assuming it's a single puzzle, assuming that you don't get pictures with your puzzle. So you just be like, and you just kind of make this thing and go, I'm done. And those people who know how puzzles would be like, you're an idiot. You're an idiot for thinking that's a puzzle. Like, those are puzzle pieces, but that is not a puzzle. You did not make a complete picture. Like, how am I supposed to know that? Exactly. It's kind of like that. So you get, someone becomes a Christian and they go into whatever church is available to them, or they're told to go to, or that's closest to their home, or has the best ad on UCB. And they go, and they don't know what Christianity is supposed to be. They've never been before. This is a completely new worldview. And so they go, and is there a class? No. There are classes, but which one are they supposed to take? Which one do they go to first? And then they go sit in general population on a Sunday morning and hear sermons, most of which means nothing to them. They're mostly about how they're supposed to spend their lives, how they're supposed to do their lives. So there's a puzzle piece. Okay, there's a puzzle piece. How do these fit? It's just a willy-nilly. I mean, we don't teach anything like that. You don't go to university and get a degree and they just start throwing classes at you. It's 101, 102, 201, 202, 301, 302. Build, graduate. Now you know what you're doing. Then you get a job and find out you don't. But let's forget that part for a moment. We're very methodical in most cases. When it comes to Christianity, we're not methodical at all. And I think part of the reason for that is we've gotten so far away, we don't even really know what we're supposed to teach. We try to do a better job in the universities, but guess what? The universities are biased. Which university? Calvin. Well, if you go to Calvin, guess what? You're going to get a Calvinistic point of view on everything. But what if you go to a Wesleyan university? Entirely different set of stuff. Very different. Pentecostal university. Well, way different still. So who's right? Everybody? Nobody? A little bit of somebody? How do we know? We don't know. This is the problem. This was really bothering me. And this came to a head for me in my own life when I had the perfect storm of problems. I was on the board of a Christian outreach program for teens, and it was a Christian outreach program. Everyone on the board was a Christian, and yet it couldn't have been more secular. All the decisions, the way the decisions were being made, the way the staff was being treated, the way the programs were being designed, the reasons for all of that, we would have a meeting about how to handle staff vacations, for example. And the first thing we do is say, well, how do they do it at CAS? Or, well, my husband works for Hydro One, and this is how they do it. Those people aren't Christians. I mean, why are we asking what they do? Kept running into that. It got very frustrating. I actually had to get off eventually. But at the same time, I was on the board there going, but what about the Bible? I was also the president of the ministerial. Try that one. It's a strange collection of networking. Everybody's trying to play nice, but they know they all are competing for the same people in the same town. They want to promote each other's stuff, but not too much, lest they lose somebody. It's really weird and awkward. And if you try to throw into that some honest conversation about unity, you'll blow it all up, which is exactly what I did because I was naive and stupid. So at the same time I'm doing that, I'm also pastoring a church that needed a ton of reform, but it was 180 years old, so that wasn't easy. And then, to bring it all to a head, I had a couple come forward in church. Very unusual for our church. We don't do altar calls and that sort of stuff. People don't come forward. But for some reason, this one Easter Sunday, I uncharacteristically said, if, I gave this gospel message, it was Easter, and I said, if this is something that sounds true to you and you want to engage it more, come to the front so I know who you are, and we'll go to my office after. And this couple came forward. I knew them. They were actually friends of ours. But shocked me. They came forward. My expectations were really low. And now I'm like, okay, so I've got this couple. They knew nothing about Christianity. They have no baggage, really. A little bit, but not really. Complete clean slate. And I'm like, where do I start? So that was it. All right, I've had enough of this. So I decided I would put together some material that would be a methodical, coherent, cohesive, consistent, non-denominational approach to Christianity and build this thing from the ground up. That was 10 years ago. I'm still working on this. This is extremely challenging stuff. But this is why we're doing it. So foundation course, beginner's course, sort of. But all of us are coming from particular biases and backgrounds, right? And we've all been taught certain things. But have we got the big picture? Have we got a hold of Christianity in a way where we can feel confident we're living our Christian lives as Jesus intends for us to do? I'm going to guess probably not, based on the reasons that I've given. I'm just going to guess that. It's going to be varying degrees, obviously. Part of that's going to be based on us ourselves. But that is the angle that I'm coming from. That is why we've got to start from the very, very beginning. And I think you might find it a little bit surprising where it goes from here. As I was beginning to put this stuff together, I had some Old Testament passages pop out at me. And this is disturbing stuff. Oh, all my bookmarks are in my other Bible. Now I have to try and find these. Amos, Isaiah. Start with Isaiah. I think more likely to find Isaiah. Isaiah 58. Lots of bad news in Isaiah. Israel had lost their way. Israel, I mean, now here's a group of people. They came to be nationified, if that's a word, through an amazing story, right? The whole Exodus thing. If you're familiar with that story, this whole idea of a massive displays of power and control by God, and then being led out of this empire of Egypt as slaves and looting Egypt on the way out and taken across the Red Sea and into the desert and manna and all this, and then up to a mountain, and then God's voice booming out and saying, "Thou shalt not," and they're like, "Oh, yeah, Moses, you go listen to him, we're all going to die." So Moses goes up the mountain, and really neat, you'd think those people would be on the ball. Well, he didn't even get down with the first set of commandments, did he? He broke them because he was mad and had to go get another set. This is the human nature problem. Anyway, so miles down the road here, God is sending prophets to tell these people, you're off. And here's the kind of stuff he says. Listen to this in context that I've set so far, in the context of church and context of us. Remember, these are people too, just like us. So 58 is quite long. I don't want to read the whole thing. I just want to get the basic idea. Shout it aloud, do not hold back, raise your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their rebellion. Okay? There's the kind of thesis statement for the chapter. Declare to my people their rebellion, to the house of Jacob their sins. And now here's what's going on. Picture this if you can. For day after day they seek me out. Now, what? Tell them about their rebellion. Tell them about their sins. Day after day they seek me out. Well, isn't that a good thing? You would think so. They seem eager to know my ways, emphasis on seem, as if they were a nation that does what is right and has not forsaken the commands of its God. They ask me for just decisions. They seem eager for God to come near to them. Why have we fasted, they say. So they're fasting, that's neat. And you have not seen it. Why have we humbled ourselves and you have not noticed? Yet, on the day of your fasting, you do as you please. Exploit your workers. Your fasting ends in quarreling and strife and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. Is this the kind of fast I have chosen? Only a day for a man to humble himself? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed or for lying in sackcloth and ashes? Is this what you call a fast? A day acceptable to the Lord? Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice, untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry, to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe him. Does this sound familiar? Jesus said a lot of stuff like this. And not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then. And he goes on like that. It actually starts Isaiah in the same kind of way in chapter 1. I'm going to start in verse 10. He says, Isaiah again, chapter 1, verse 10. Hear the word of the Lord, you rulers of Sodom. When he calls you the rulers of Sodom, that's an insult. Just in case you were like, hey, is that a good thing? I want to be a ruler. Not of Sodom, you don't. Listen to the law of your God, you people of Gomorrah. The multitude of your sacrifices, what are they to me? So they're doing the sacrifices like they're supposed to. They're following the law. What are they to me, says the Lord? I have more than enough of burnt offerings, of rams and the fat of fattened animals. I have no pleasure in the blood of bulls and lambs and goats. Suppose that was a shocker? I mean, he's the one that told him to do it. But not because it pleased him. He wasn't looking for dead animals. God isn't weird like that. He's weird in other ways, but not like that. When you come to appear before me, who has asked this of you, this trampling of my courts? Stop bringing meaningless offerings. Your incense is detestable to me. New moons, Sabbaths, convocations. I cannot bear your evil assemblies. Your new moon festivals, your appointed feast, my soul hates. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. And he just goes on like that. And in case that you think that's just Isaiah, you can just write these down because they're going to sound very redundant. Amos chapter 5, 21 to 24, same stuff. There he says, stop singing. I don't want to hear it anymore. Stop singing. That's Amos. And Micah 6 through 8, similar kind of stuff. So what happened? They're doing sacrifices. They're fasting. They're praying. They seem to want the Lord to draw near to them. What happened? Same thing. They have shifted their focus so that now they're completely missing the point. I don't want your dead animals, God says. I don't want your dead animals. I want you to care for the sick. I want you to care for the poor. I want you to take care of the oppressed. It's not that that's new information. He's been saying that all along. But somehow their focus shifted. Their emphasis shifted. And they just want God to give them stuff. And so they're going through the motions to get it. And he said, it ain't happening. These are just people. This is actually a normal progression. He gave us the book of Judges so that we could see that this will happen over and over and over. We're not immune to this. We need to go into it knowing we're not immune to this so that we can set up guards against it, so that we can protect ourselves, so that we can, if you can visualize this, you're driving down the 401 or something. And I've experienced this for myself. If you start to wander a little bit off the road, what happens? Those are very helpful for some of us. And you steer back. That's what we need. We need more in our church. We need more of that. We need more of that in our lives because we should know, especially Christians, going into it, that our propensity is for wandering. Prone to wander. Prone to wander. We have historical evidence that that is the case. We have personal experience that that is the case. And we have been victims of others who have proven that that is the case. So, what I would like to do, what I've been trying to do is it possible to go back, start from the beginning, and set up in our minds and in our midst a way of looking at Christianity that will get us to where we want to be and help us to stay there. That's the goal. Now, as I thought about this over the last 10 years and have revised and revised and revised, and you're still guinea pigs, this is just another revision, I keep getting steered back to the same kind of place of it's about catching the essence. Because Judaism and Christianity have this in common. They're not inherently religions. Religions are systems put in place to dictate how people should live, and that's dictated by a god or gods or whatever. That is not what God was doing with the Jews. That is certainly not what he has done with us. Actually, that's what I read to you, that's what he was saying. This isn't a system. This isn't a religion. Instead, what it's meant to be is a response to a speaking God. Okay? I find it very frustrating, especially as a kind of public speaker type person, but really just as an individual. My daughters aren't here, so I can say this. One of my daughters, I won't tell you which one, has this annoying habit. Oh, by the way, we're on video. So you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you by your friends and family. So I've got to be careful. Hopefully my daughter... So I won't tell you which daughter, so I can just pretend like it's the other one when I get accused. One of my daughters has this annoying habit of, when you're talking to her, of correcting your inaccuracies. It's really annoying when you're scolding them. And your grammar's a little off and she fixes it. Or you said this happened yesterday, but it was the day before yesterday. No, that was the day before yesterday. That's very annoying. Or as a pastor, you go to all this length to explain something for the benefit of the hearer, and then as they're shaking their hand out the door, they say, either way, good sermon, Pastor, I really learned blah, 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 and you never even said that? Or, well, you're free to have your opinion if you don't mind being wrong. I got that one once. And then goes on to tell me what I said, which I never said. Like, well, if I'd said that, I would be wrong. But I never said it. Where were you this morning? It's very frustrating because the reason why we use words is not to hand over to somebody a bunch of words. We're trying to communicate ideas, concepts, feelings, ourselves. And to have another person misunderstand you, especially if they're doing it on purpose, or to not reach for your idea, but instead to focus on the words, it's very frustrating. We don't like being misunderstood. We certainly don't like being reduced to language. This is a very easy way to make that mistake. We've got a whole bunch of words here, a whole bunch of words, and we crack this thing open and we read a whole bunch of words. But what are we really doing? Listening to a speaking God. And the point is, we want to hear what he means to say. Not just the words coming out of his mouth. What does he mean to say? And where you get a lot of the debate and division in church is arguing over the words and completely missing the point of the intent. And in fact, the argument itself is often missing the point of the intent. So that's why we're talking about the essence of Christianity. I'm sure I'm going to say a lot of things that will seem to you and may actually be inaccurate or oversimplified or a huge summary or even my opinion. I will definitely be giving my opinion. And if you need me to justify that opinion, fine, I'll do that. I just don't want to spend a bunch of time throwing a bunch of scripture at something you guys already agree with me. So I will go back and do that if I need to. But what we're trying to do with this class over the next 13 weeks and then 13 years or whatever is to catch what God is saying in this entire thing and everything else outside of it that is also true. What's he trying to say? What is going on in the world? Why? And to be able to take hold of those answers because they're there. They're all there. That's one of the things I love about Christianity. We got all the answers. I mean, give us the test. We're ready. Then we have all these debates and stuff that are happening in the world all the time, speculation and opinions and all the rest of it. We actually have a revelation. It's awesome. It's amazing. We can answer whatever. I mean, that's important. It's all there. But we have to take hold of it and take hold of it in a way that's true, not just accurate, but true. Let me give you a little demonstration for a second. Let's imagine you walk into a room and you see Mike dead on the floor. So the first thing you're going to notice is that Mike is dead on the floor.
We do like role-playing.
Role-playing? It would be fun. All right. Mike? Let's go ahead. Mike, you're dead on the floor. All right. He doesn't want to be dead on the floor. So picture that. Mike is dead on the floor. A pool of blood. That's important that you see that there's a pool of blood because now you can start to see why Mike is dead on the floor. He's actually got a gunshot wound. He's been shot. He's been probably murdered because he doesn't have a gun in his hand, so it wasn't suicide. Instead, you look over and you see me with a gun. And you're like, Phil shot Mike. Okay, so the first question is, how did Mike die? The answer is Phil shot Mike. So now you know what has happened. Okay, end of scene. Problem solved. We're done. Phil, go to jail. You shot Mike. Well, wait a minute. Don't you want to know why I shot Mike? There's a little more story going on here. Yeah, Phil, why did you shoot Mike? Because he tried to stab me, and I got away from him, and he kept chasing me, and I didn't have any choice but to put him down. So I shot Mike. Oh, well, that changes everything. So first we have this issue of what? And now we have the issue of why. And then you noticed, actually, I'm dressed a little different than everybody else. You know why? I'm a police officer. So now you know who. Think I'm still going to jail? No. But if you'd have stopped here, you would have convicted me of murder. If you'd have gone here, you're still not sure. Okay, you shot him. He had a knife. Okay, it might be justifiable. It might be justifiable. But as soon as you find out I'm a policeman, I'm doing my job. He's trying to kill an officer of the law. And I took every step I could avoid, but I still had to shoot him. Well, now it's an entirely different story. Okay? That's the kind of the approach that we need to take. If you just read this book and you just say, what? And then you'll say, oh, there's a what. And then someone else will say, but there's a what. Go over there. We'll have our what over here. A lot of Christianity ends right there. A lot of church work just ends right there. Our what versus your what. Our what versus your what. And we just disagree on a whole lot of whats. And the question is never asked, why? Why speak in tongues? It's not just a what of speaking in tongues. Well, we believe in speaking in tongues. Well, we're dispensationalists. You're what? Well, you spoke in tongues when they were the apostles, but they all died, so no more speaking in tongues. What? But we speak in tongues. No, you don't. You're just emotionalists. What? What? Over and over. Well, I'm a Calvinist. What does that mean? Tulip? T. U. I mean, you're all Calvinists. Can you tell me what tulip stands for? That's what I thought. They're like, well, I'm Armenian. They're like, oh, so you can lose your salvation? Why would I do that? Because you can? So you can't lose your salvation? No, once saved, always saved. What does that mean? I don't know. What? Never the twain shall meet. Why? Why could you lose your salvation? Why not lose your salvation? Why baptism? Why? But that's not even really the full answer. The answer is who. If you start with who, and then you say, okay, now let's get to know the who. In the beginning, God. In the beginning, God created. So we have this God who, by definition, must be self-sufficient, self-existent. By definition, must be. Why is he creating? Why in the world is he creating? Not just what? 6 days. Oh, I don't think it's a literal 6 days. What? Why? He's creating. Why is he creating? Do we care about why, or are we just going to debate the what of 6 days? It doesn't make any sense. Who cares? It's why he did it, which is coming directly out of who he is. This is the approach we need to take so we can grasp the essence of a God who creates and puts on that creation a man in his own image and a woman to partner with that man and puts them in a garden with a tree so that they can fail. What was he thinking? How many times have I heard that? Why did he put that tree in there? Was he just dumb? Like, why not just take the tree out? What was he thinking? Is it like no choice? You plant a garden, there must be this one tree of knowledge of good and evil? Well, I mean, was he just like, this will be fun, let's see what happens? Was he just kind of testing, and was this a social experiment? What's going on here? I cannot tell you how many times I've been asked that question, both by Christians and non-Christians alike. Well, that's because you don't understand why. If you understand why he was doing this whole story, the garden would be self-explanatory. The tree has to be there. No tree, no point. There has to be a tree. And when you understand why there has to be a tree, you understand why there's pain and suffering in the world. You know how many pastors have left their faith because they couldn't solve the question of why there's pain and suffering in the world? Many smart people, committed, supposedly Christians, walked away from their faith because they couldn't solve the problem of pain and suffering in the world. I find it easy. It's not complicated at all. It's the same answer as the tree. It's the natural progression of the tree. It's the only reason we could have a cross. A cross isn't in response. Now I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but the cross isn't a response to the tree. The cross was the idea from the beginning. The tree was there for the cross, not the other way around. How's that for flipping your head around? But you get to understand God in order for that to make any sense. What is he doing? Why? We answer all that. So the approach that we're going to take, what's the time? I told you I can go on forever. We go to 9, right? Awesome. Okay. Because I'm 10, yeah, 10:30. I can go by dates instead of time if you want. We can go till March, May, 2018. Seriously, I could just do this forever. I'm only on my first page of notes. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the opposite of the puzzle problem. We're not going to go start in Genesis and start throwing out pieces. It's helpful that you already have some, I don't know how much, but some understanding of Christianity. You've already been exposed to the Bible. You've already heard a lot of pieces. Some of the pieces that you've gotten are probably confusing. Some of the pieces you've gotten are from other puzzles. They're not Christian at all. I can almost guarantee that's the case. Not on purpose. It's just because of the course of time. I haven't been in a church yet that didn't hand out pieces that didn't belong to Christianity. Not yet, in all my experience. Just obviously so. And if I were to confront the pastor on it, he would agree with me. He knows. He just didn't know when he said it. It's just habit. And it's just part of the puzzle problem. So here's what we're going to do, though. Instead of pieces, we're going to start with the picture. So I'm going to quickly go through enough of the material to give you a big picture, and then we're going to go back up. We're going to take the pieces apart a little bit, shake them up, and then start showing how they fit. And my goal is to make a puzzler out of you, because what I can't do is tell you everything that I know and point you in a direction to get stuff that I don't know. Like, we don't have enough time for that. And besides, that's not equipping, that's indoctrination. What I want to do is help you get the tools so that when you're sitting on a Sunday morning, you can go, oh, that's good. I need that. That goes here. That applies here. Here's how I need to respond to that. And then you can go, that on the other hand wasn't right. I'm going to just put that over there. No big deal. Just put that over there. And you can build the faith yourself in a cohesive, coherent, consistent, and useful way, and feel confident about that. That's the goal. Paul, I don't know if I can achieve that in 13 weeks, but we'll try. So we'll start with the big picture, and first, the big picture from 30,000 feet away. So we take the whole thing and put it in a nut. So I'm going to give you a one-sentence description of Christianity. It's an oversimplification by nature, and then we'll start to zoom in, okay? So here's the kind of one-sentence premise for Christianity. It goes like this. God is relational and has made us for relationship. Sounds simple enough, doesn't it? Requires a tremendous amount of unpacking. But that's the basic idea. Now, just keep that idea in mind all the time. And if you approach something, now again, I'm just making the statement. I'm not trying to prove it. Hopefully it'll somewhat prove itself as we go, and if you need me to back it up, I can tear the Bible apart for this one. It's easy. Okay, this is so clear. I've never had anybody disagree with me on this. God is relational, and he has made us for relationship. Once you plant that in your head, everything that smacks of something else can automatically be either rejected or twisted, turned, so that it makes sense with that in mind. For example, I told you, I started in a church that was legalistic. Here's the thing about legalism, and legalism exists just about everywhere, but it's silly. It makes no sense. So let's say, for example, I'm driving down the road, and the speed limit is 80. Why is it that when I do 85, the police don't pull me over? I'm breaking the law right in front of their face. In fact, I can do nearly 95 with the police right there, and they don't pull me over. Why is that? Somebody tell me. What's that? I'm not breaking it enough. What is that about? Are they just lazy? Well, take your seatbelt off and you'll find out how lazy they aren't. They'll get you for that in a hurry. Answer your cell phone and see how lazy they aren't. Why are they so particular about the cell phone, but not so particular about the speed limit? Why is that? Because so everybody's doing it, or is it the other way around? Everybody's doing it because they can. More accidents with the cell phone than the speeding within range, right? So in other words, the law was made for man, not man for the law. So they made a speed limit to say, this is a pretty safe speed, but really you can go a little faster, and it's still safe. But if you hit this speed here, now you're being an idiot, and I'm pulling you over. Cell phones, on the other hand, are unsafe almost all the time, so we will get you for that. The issue is public safety. They don't know if you can drive well with a cell phone or not. They've got no way of judging that, so they're just going to pull you over every time if they see you. But pretty much everybody's safe with 90. So they let you go, unless you're like weaving around and then they pull you over. So the idea is that it's not about the law, it's about safety. Same idea. When you talk about Christianity as being a relational God who has made us for relationship, and then there's a bunch of rules involved, and Pharisees pull Jesus aside and say, why are your disciples picking the heads off of grain on the Sabbath? He's like, what are you, stupid? Like, come on. They're like, you're working on the Sabbath. Or worse, they bring a man to Jesus with a withered hand on the Sabbath to see if he'll heal them. You know how much work it is for Jesus to heal somebody? It was more work to bring the guy than it was for Jesus to heal him. But he's breaking the Sabbath. You see this whole idea of missing the point? This is why Jesus was always saying, well, you have heard it said. And we can go all day about that. Every time he said that, it was about them missing the point. So anything that smacks of legalism is clearly already rejected as Christianity. It's just not part of Christianity. That's just one little piece to help you. But let me show you how this relational thing works. You know what's interesting? What is the highest command given by God? Specifically, love God. How weird is that? Highest command given by God. You must love me. Well, that's a bit self-interested, don't you think? I don't even have the nerve to command my children to love me. And he just creates all these people and he says, you must love me or else. Well, that's a bit complicated. I'm not going to get into how that makes sense. But I will say what it does say about God. That's what he wants. That's the response he's looking for. That's what he made us for. So it's pretty obvious, right? And that was before Jesus even came along. But I want to take you to a passage that Jesus illustrates how the world looks and how it is meant to look. And it's in Luke chapter 15. I stole this from Timothy Keller. By the way, I steal a lot. I'll try to remember to tell you where I've stolen all my stuff. Luke chapter 15. Luke 15 this particular, it's got stories in it, very well-known stories, but I want to go to the one that's known the most. And that's the story of it's probably called the prodigal son in your Bible. That's the heading. Just so you know, that heading is added, right? Jesus didn't say, and now I'll tell you the story of the prodigal son. Please write that headline, buddy. That didn't happen. So I would even say that that's a misnomer. It's not actually a parable of the prodigal son. It's a parable of two lost sons. We call it the parable of the two lost sons if you want. Timothy Keller, in his book Prodigal God, actually calls it parable of the prodigal God. You have to understand what the word prodigal means, and he gets into all that. Excellent book. Love Timothy Keller. He also tapped into this idea a little bit in his reasons for God. So if you're looking for something to read, read just about anything by Timothy Keller. Prodigal God's really excellent. And he goes on and on and on about this, something I'm going to give you in just a few minutes. All right. You know the story, so I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to kind of tell it. So you have a man with two sons, and the youngest son comes to his father and he says, I wish you were dead. Paraphrasing, obviously, because he didn't actually use those words. He had a little more tact than that, but that's what he said. He said, I want my inheritance now. That's the same as saying I wish you were dead. I want my inheritance now while you're still alive. And because I want to strike out on my own instead of the family business and all that. I want to strike out on my own. And the father, in a very strange response, said, okay. Very strange. Jewish culture, dad, no, that wouldn't have happened. But anyway, he did. He said, okay, here you go. You can have what you want. Now, this son represents this kind of life. All right. This is a one-dimensional life. It is the lifestyle that we would call secularism, hedonism, humanism. What other? I probably have another ism in there somewhere. Empiricism. Okay? It's the one-dimensional approach to be basically physical only. Physical approach to life. So people who, like I say, empiricists, scientists tend to be this way. They only believe what they can measure, what they can weigh, what they can test. The irony of that is you can't test if that is a true way of doing it or not. Anyway, that's just fun. So he's like, give me my stuff. I want to go and just live. And so he gives him his stuff and he goes and lives. It goes very well for him for about 15 minutes. And then it didn't go so well for him and he turned and came back. Okay, so that's the younger son. When he came back, the older son said, what's he doing here? And if you read the story, the older son is quite impertinent in his response to his father. This son of yours, not my brother, this son of yours went and spent all his money on prostitutes and riotous living, and now you've taken him back. Look here, he says to his father. It was quite a nasty way of talking. But at least the older son, wrong color. I'm very careful with my colors. Oh, not so careful with the mic. Okay. This is a two-dimensional approach to life. Which actually, so the difference is this approach to life takes God into account. Okay, the Father is obviously God in the story. This one doesn't take God into account at all, just wants life the way he wants it. I did it my way. This one here, I did it God's way and hated every minute of it. And if you read the story, you can see that. Hated it. I did my duty. I went and took everything, did everything you told me to do. I have never failed to do what you told me to do, but you never gave me even a goat to spend with my friends. Okay, this is called religion. Okay, it takes into account God, but what it really is, this is a selfish lifestyle. This is a selfish lifestyle. It's a quid pro quo relationship with God. If I do as I'm told, I'll get what I want. Maybe in this life, but at least in the next. Because God will judge me righteous for having obeyed him. And when my dad finally dies, or in this case, when I finally die, I will get my rightful, earned inheritance. There's a little bit of that in just about all of us, right? You ever gotten frustrated with God for not giving you what you thought he should have given you? Not answering your prayer the way you thought he should? That's religion. That's kind of Job, right, saying, why has this happened to me? And God said to him, let me explain to you why in detail. Mind your own business, I'm God. Didn't even, right? Didn't answer his question. He said, who do you think you are to even ask? And Job's like, good point. I'll shut my mouth. That's what he said. I'll shut my mouth. Good action, good reaction. Okay, so it's that quid pro quo. If I do what I'm doing, God owes me. God owes me, right? That's religion. That's the two-dimensional approach to life. Christianity is what Timothy Keller calls the third way. It's a three-dimensional approach to life. And interestingly, in the story, the third son is missing. But the third son's the one telling the story. Jesus is the third son. Jesus is the one who is not living life for himself or out of duty, but in relationship. This is the relational approach, the three-dimensional approach that not only that takes into account God, but has an inner response to God that works itself out in the exterior. Three-dimensional. This is what Christianity is supposed to look like. And when we respond with the prosperity gospel that says, you know, I get stuff, gold teeth and whatnot. Wrong answer. Or if it's this, You had better follow the rules. Did I see you in the liquor store? I think I saw you in the liquor store. Wrong. That's legalism. And that's also not Christianity. That's a religion calling itself Christianity. But it is not Christianity. It's instead a relationship. Now, here's the problem with relationships. They're very subjective. And that gets us into a lot of trouble. People are very nervous about this approach. Because suddenly we're not really in a position to tell each other what to do. There's no control. It's like, I think let's go with the religion. I can make rules and I can say tithe, because I know how much tithe is, 10%, which is an Old Testament idea, not a New Testament idea. It's tithing is not Christian. Oops, I said that out loud. Okay, and I can go on and explain why. If you need to debate that with me, I can. We are in relationship with God in a all or nothing kind of way. All right? So tithing is a kind of, if I do what I must, I'll get what I want. Whereas giving is a, boy, do I ever love my God. Man, has he ever blessed me. I can't wait to participate in what he's doing. Here's my stuff. Go for it. Entirely different attitude, right? But there's no control, and people don't give. So we enforce tithing. That's a little side note. By the way, this religion thing, I just want to mention this. Bruxy Cavey, have you ever heard of Bruxy Cavey? He has a book called The End of Religion. Really good stuff. He just tears the idea of a Christian religion apart. There is no such thing as a Christian religion. We'll use the term religion for the sake of everyone else, because they have no... Did you know that the first Christians were called atheists? I think that's dynamic. That's how you know you're getting it right. When they think you're an atheist, then you're confused the crud out of them, and that means you're doing it right. Because if they can categorize you as a religion, you're doing it wrong. You just look like everybody else. You might as well be Muslim, or you might as well be Jewish, or you might as well be Hindu, or whatever. Because you just look like them, going through the motions of appeasing your God so that he will give you the blessings of life, or eternal life. And that's not Christianity at all. Ours is completely different. We're supposed to just blow their socks off. And so they were like, these people at the beginning, they have no building. They have no priest. They have no idols. They have no rituals. They're atheists, obviously. Because what do you call a group of people who don't have those things? They obviously don't believe in anything, except that they eat this blood and bread of Jesus thing. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. And they were very confused, except that the same guy who called him an atheist also said, however, he was writing a letter to somebody else in government, and he said, however, these people, they take really good care of each other. And they not only take care of their own poor, so they actually have no poor, they're taking care of our poor too. So it's really strange. He couldn't quite figure out what to do with these people that were atheists. It didn't make any sense to him. That's good. That's the way it's supposed to be. You would think this three-dimensional approach to God would be kind of instinctive for us. You really haven't interrupted me yet? That's really strange. You will. You would think this would be instinctive for us because we're relational beings. Like, we just know this. We want to connect. We're scared to connect. But we want to connect. We want to come together with people. We want to speak our minds and be heard. We want to reveal our hearts and be accepted. We want to walk our way with people who are walking the way with us. We want that. You would think that we could just take that nature of ours and reverse engineer and understand that we get that from God. It's the very base of our nature. We obviously got that from God. He's the same way. So relating with God is obviously the step forward. Problem is we're fallen. And here's where the fallenness gets in the way. The way our fallen nature wants to relate is the opposite of the way God relates. Let me illustrate. This is something I got from C.S. Lewis. So let me start with the nature of God. Now, I should warn you, don't debate with me yet, all right? I did this with the teenagers, and we never got over it. Because they went to Christian school. Anyway, where did my black marker go? Oh. All right, so let's say for argument that this is a person. Even though it looks nothing like a person. I draw as well as I write. Let's put a circle around them. That'll come in later. Stole that from Da Vinci, right? Vitruvian Man? Okay. You can tell. Here, does this help? Long hair. Now you recognize him? All right. Let's say that's a person. And what makes a person? We're a complex being, okay? How are we different from your pet dog? Kind of goes like this. Your dog likes you because he's a dog, not because you're likable. Sorry. No offense. Maybe you're likable, but that's not why he likes you. He likes you because he's a dog. Dogs are just nice. And they just kind of like people by default. They're just the nature of a dog. So animals kind of just follow their nature and instincts, right? But a person has this strange capacity to think. And when I say think, I mean contemplate, reason. Not just to contemplate, but to even contemplate themselves. Who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing? Am I doing what I want to be doing? That's a good question. Maybe I want to be doing something else. Okay, I'll do that. That's kinds of thoughts. Your dog's not thinking like that. Look at them. They're just like food, pet, the things they know they want. It's just instinct. We also have this capacity to feel. And I don't mean pain or pleasure, but I mean like emotions. And in those feelings, and in the combination with thinking, we can choose for ourselves values and priorities. And things like that, passions and whatnot. And we can even change them. I want to play the violin. Never mind. Like that. I love the violin until I try it, and then I don't like the violin anymore. And we can just change that. We're not just going to spend the rest of our life trying to play the violin, which is what a dog would do, because they don't know any better. And then we have this capacity to decide, to make plans, and to carry them out, to change our plans and to carry them out based on new information that we have gotten, and we'll contemplate that information, change the way we feel, make a different plan. Okay, that's what makes us a person. Now, God is more complex than we are. And you'll just have to accept what I'm about to draw as inaccurate as it will be. This is really inaccurate. Brace yourselves. All right, so I'm going to do it like this. And I just decided this a few minutes ago. All right, God. Theologically accurate depiction of God. False. It's impossible to theologically accurate picture of God. It's impossible. So, we'll just go with this is the rendering of an impossibility, okay? God. What makes him so complex is that he does what we do times 3, right? So he is a single being of some kind, not physical. That's impossible. He's spiritual in nature. He has to be because he created all things physical, so he's before that. So obviously he's not physical. So, but somehow he's yet a cohesive thing. Don't like that word. Cohesive being thing. And yet, within this, he's more evolved than we are, or more complex than we are, in the sense that he's doing what we're doing times 3. So we use the terminology 3 persons. And we typically call them, though this is not accurate, Father, Son, and Spirit. More accurately, we would probably say Father, maybe Word. But the Word became Son, and so we call him Son. And was the Father always a Father? Not if the Son was the Word. Anyway. So we'll go with that. And now here's the interesting thing. If you have a God who has 3 persons, it creates an entirely different dynamic than a person who has 1 person. Now, I might be capable of having split personalities, but that is not the same thing, because I can only be 1 personality at a time. Whereas God's all 3 at once. So he has this ability by himself to relate. He is by definition relational and always has been. We are the only ones, Christians, are the only ones who claim a necessary relational component or attribute to God in our definition of the Trinity. So, by nature, God defines what relationship actually is. That's important to us because we are relational and we want to do relationship. But we need to understand as we go forward with doing relationship that we got that nature from God. Therefore, he defines what relationship is, and we need to be informed of that. Okay? There's a word for the way he relates. Do you know what that word is? See if your old brain's still going. My daughter answered this without hesitation. So either I'm a very good teacher or she's a very good student. There's a word. And from a teacher, no less. When did I lose you, Terry? How far back should I go? Here's the question. There is a word for the way God relates. Yes. Love. Who said that? Star. I heard a male voice first. Yes. You get the prize that I don't have. Love. Okay. So that's the word for the way God relates. Very interesting. We should look into that because that is the way God made us to relate. And we use this word a lot. I love ice cream. A lot. But really, we don't have a very good idea of what it means, especially given our fallen nature. And I'll show you why here in just a second. So he doesn't just define relationship. He defines the way he relates, which is love. And here's the way it works. So I'm going to have to switch images on you. Let's separate them because it's a relationship now. So we'll say Father, Son, Spirit. Clearly, that's heresy. But we're talking about the relationship. We often describe this relationship with this symbol. Seen that before? Not seen that before? It's a symbol for the Trinity. It's quite often used as a symbol for the Trinity, which is bad because, like I said, you cannot articulate the Trinity with an illustration without being heretical. You can't. It's impossible. So if you try to use all the imagery of water or an egg or a three-leaf clover, every time you do that, you've introduced a heresy in your teaching. It can't be done. Okay? That's a conversation for another day. But if you clarify that you've failed, what? Yes, I'm going to do it anyway. As you know, though, it's heresy. So I'm telling you that up front so that we can get past and get to the point, so you can hear me, understand me. What I'm describing is not the Trinity, the nature of the Trinity, but the relationship.